Welcome back, everybody. Hope you are well and rested for some more talks. Very, very energizing. I had a big burger, and then I had a matcha to bounce back, so the caffeine can last a little bit longer, right? Yep. So now we're going to welcome our next talk up. I want to tell you more about some of the tabs I have open in my browser. That is very scary. Hopefully he vetted that. I'll read a little bit about it. And this is coming from Jeremy's perspective. Join me, Jeremy, not me, you are not seeing my tabs, as I open up my web browser on my laptop and flip through the tabs and talk about some of the stuff I've been thinking about lately, inspirations, how I piece together large new media projects, and hopefully avoid accidentally showing you my recent search and video history. So kudos to you on that one. And I'll read his bio real quick as well, too. Jeremy Couillard is a New York-based artist spending his year-long sabbatical in Berlin. His work usually involves installations built around video games, deploying humorous narratives about future dystopians to explore what motivates us as humans to work, live, and create. Please welcome Jeremy to the stage.
Hello. Is this good? You can hear me? Wait. How do I get it up? There. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. It's so nice out, but you're here listening to me. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Amaze, for having this event. And thank you so much to Silent Green for hosting it. Let's see. I'm super out of practice speaking. I've been on sabbatical from teaching for the past year. So just bear with me as I get more comfortable. I had an idea to originally just show some tabs in my browser. When they asked me to do the talk, that's just what I had. And typical me, I just like change things as I go along. So this is now just like a Google Slides thing. It was just too hard to go through the tabs. While testing, it didn't work out. So instead, I'm going to talk about games that I like and kind of talk a little bit about how I approach my own projects. Let's see. First, though, I just want to give a little bit of background as to who I am and how I'm approaching the video game thing. I never studied games formally. I'm totally self-taught in this world. I went to school for painting, and I painted for many, many years, acrylic paintings. But always, I had a lot of technology in my paintings. You can see I am literally like painting computers and cords, and I was thinking about how technology works in our lives and all that. And all the time I was painting, computers were very close to me, and I was using them for image references. And I was using them to keep myself entertained while I made these tedious paintings, listening to podcasts, watching movies and stuff like that. Then I slowly moved to doing CG. That's like a thing I made in CG with some painting on it, and then I did animation. As soon as Unreal Engine came out, and Unreal Engine 4 in 2014, I was just completely addicted to it and have used it almost every day of my life since then. When I started making video games, I had some galleries I was working with in New York, and I would make my games for art shows and then kind of build installations around them. This is my video game Alien Afterlife at Yours, Mine, and Ours gallery in 2017. And you can see I turned the gallery into kind of like a living room space where you could sit and chill out and play the game. I think one of my favorite definitions of art or my favorite type of art is stuff that doesn't look like art, right? So when I do these shows, I really like to make the gallery not look like an art gallery right away, so people can't tell what it is. And games are really great for that, because still I think some people always like to talk like, are games art? I mean, of course they are, but still like in the art world, that debate is happening. So it's an interesting space to work in. Let's see. These are some games that I made. My last one was Fuzz Dungeon, and the one that's nominated here at Amaze is Escape from Lavender Island. They're all on Steam. I think this one is my fifth one that's on Steam. If if I could like define what kind of games that I like and what kind of games I make, I think I would call them critical games. This is just a little more explanatory from broad terms like indie games or experimental games or art house games or art games. Or I think you could call my games those as well, and I think a lot of other types of games. But if I'm to really like narrow down what it is, I'd use the term critical games. And I'm using this from a book by Scott McDonald on critical cinema, where he makes a distinction between avant-garde and critical. And I really like this distinction, and it kind of helps guide me while I'm working on projects. So this is in the introduction of the book. So he says critical games are different than avant-garde games, than avant-garde cinema. And that avant-garde is something that comes first, right? And then commercial projects will replicate that style. So think about someone like John Whitney, who made these abstract mathematical films in the 60s, and then Hitchcock using those in, I think it was Vertigo, right? In the intro credits to Vertigo. So that would be something avant-garde. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing something critical, where critical cinema would rely on commercial films to come first, develop a certain language, and then the critical cinema would come after and critique that language and how that functions in culture. So one director he uses as an example in the intro of the book is John Waters. So one thing John Waters does that I really like is he plays with these notions of American suburbs in all his films, right? And the American suburbs get very normalized in Hollywood films, right? So I think of movies like E.T. or Back to the Future, where they have these like white picket fences, perfect nuclear families. And I'm from the suburbs. They're really like fucked up places. They're not anything like that in reality, right? And John Waters is someone who's really good at kind of making us question like why these things get normalized in cinema and just what is normal in general, right? This is a still from A Dirty Shame, which was his last movie. Did anyone see this? I really liked it. It had bad reviews. I don't know why. But it was basically about like a sex cult ran by Johnny Knoxville that terrorized this subdivision in Baltimore. And so it's just making us question like what is normal, right? So we can use this idea of critical cinema and also apply it to video games. So here's one, hopefully I think most people would know. Cruelty Squad came out in 2021. And something like this could not exist, right, without Call of Duty or something like that coming before it, right? It's responding to those types of games. It's using the convention of a first-person shooter to, I think, mostly critique video games' relationship to the military and to capitalism. The artist of this game describes it as an immersive power fantasy simulator with tactical stealth elements, which I really like. So if you haven't played it, and I can't get that far in it because I'm not that good at shooters, but I just really like that it exists. You play as like a mercenary for a corporation, and you have a stock ticker, and the more people you kill, I think the more your stock will, like, things will happen with it, right? So it's critiquing how capitalism and the military function in video games, right? Another one I really like is Crypt Worlds by Lilith Zone in 2014. And I think something like this maybe couldn't exist without the first-person adventure game, right? So she's really using that language and those assumptions we take around those types of games and playing around with them, right? So in this game, I guess in most first-person adventure games, there's a hero, there's bad guys, you collect things, you level up, and those are all like assumptions that we would have around those games. But this really plays around with that, right? So you can collect gold, but it doesn't really do anything. Your main weapon is you can like piss all over stuff. And she describes it as, you'll grind against the walls of the crypts, yearning for any sensation in this lonely hell world, right? So it's kind of an analogy for, a daily grind in our lives. Because in real life, that's what we collect things, we forget why. We do things, we don't really know what we're doing. We pee all over stuff. Life doesn't really work like a normal first-person adventure game. It's probably more analogous to something like this. One more that I really like is Super Bogus World by Hubble. This was a huge collection of mini-games that he programmed from 2014 to 2020. Did people know about this one still? No? I recommend checking it out. He's also a really good programmer. He made an engine that himself for this game because it's so wild and all over the place. I don't think a regular game engine could handle it. But I played it for, 4 or 5 hours. I don't know what percentage that I got through it. But it's just, I think maybe hundreds of mini games that are in this kind of world. And obviously he's riffing off, Super Mario Brothers. But one thing this is really doing that I like is so many games have this like super tight, cohesive design to them that I kind of don't like because I don't think it represents real life, right? You think about a city like Berlin, and it feels like 20 different cities in one, right? You go to any neighborhood, and you're like, where the hell am I right now? And there's different types of people. We have different styles. You see ads that are in different designs, right? So I think daily life is more like this, right, than Super Mario Brothers that has super cohesive design. So that's a nice thing that he's doing in here and critiquing. I think stuff like Tux and Fanny does that really well too. In my game Fuzz Dungeon, I had a lot of these mini games too that are just like all over the place with design. Okay, so that's all great. We can use this critical cinema terminology to talk about video games, but video games are not movies. I think they are new media, right? So what does that mean, and how can we add that to this concept of criticality? So if we can use the term, we can define new media based on the theorist Lev Manovich, who kind of defined all this, I think, in like the 80s. He defines new media as any media object that you can take and subject to programming. So nowadays, pretty much everything is new media, but video games are in a unique position because I think, and maybe I'm making this up obviously, but I think they're the first art form to come to be natively new media, right? So there's Cory Arcangel's Super Mario Clouds. Cory Arcangel is one of the more well-known new media artists. He hacked Super Mario ROM to just show us the clouds, right? Streaming by, right? So he took those clouds as a new media object and subjected them to different types of programming, right? To have a new media artwork. So this is used by, I think, like bigger game studios, this concept of new media. They're taking assets from their games, they're taking, writing, graphics, and creating this like kind of community of consumers, right? That's kind of a lot of times I think these larger studios, that's like their goal is to make as much money as possible from merch and all that stuff, right? Call of Duty can take logos and create fidget spinners for some reason. Xbox can make shampoo. I don't know why you would need Xbox shampoo. And then of course we have movies, the Mario movie that's out right now, but then we have the one from the 90s as well that's way weirder. I don't know. So this is a way that bigger corporations can use new media to create this community of consumers. But when we make critical games, we can also think about how they also exist in larger contexts, right? Rather than just on our computers. So just like those companies think about how their games exist in other contexts, us as consumers and creators of critical games can think about how our games will exist in different contexts, In the same way that in the 70s, the people who made critical cinema would show their cinemas sometimes for the first time in places like bars or smaller venues, right? Or at parties. Because before that, nowadays we take it for granted, but before that, film was mostly in a movie theater, right? And in doing this, they were creating these alternative communities around around what they were doing, right? So there's a flyer from an underground film festival in the 70s at a famous bar in New York. So Fantasia Malware that we saw here on Wednesday, they did their really amazing performance, Sex at Alexanderplatz, and I think this is a really exemplary version of what I'm talking about. They have the game Sex at Alexanderplatz. That's, I would say, a critical game. It's really like playing with expectations we have around dating apps, around things that that the software does to us with like bright lights, loud noises, all that stuff. They're also very generously using their own experiences, I think, with dating that we can all kind of like relate to. So there's a version of like online dating that Tinder tries to sell us, and then there's the version that actually happens when we do that, right? So it exists as a critical game, but then also Fantasia Malware takes all this and they've created a scene around their projects. And all last year they performed them all over Berlin. I think hundreds and hundreds of people came, probably a lot of you here, I think, maybe came to those events. And instead of this type of merch, they would create things like posters, pamphlets. They gave out condoms that were branded, I think, at one point. And they really created a scene around what they were doing that probably didn't exist before, because they're showing video games in a new way, I think, right? So I really like new media for when I'm working, because I'm always working on a really large project, and I have this database of stuff that can be used anywhere. So while I'm working on it, if I have some opportunities to do other stuff, like when Jira from Fantasia Malware asked me to do a performance with her back last August, I could create a version of my game for that performance, and then Jira and I could pool our databases together and create a simulation that we played while the DJ set happened after our performances, right? So these are just cool things that the new media can do that I like. So this is my last game, Fuzz Dungeon. It was also a lot of different things other than a video game. It was a simulation that played online during COVID with a gallery. I made a music video from it. I made this really kind of goofy fake merch store with t-shirts and hats and stuff. And then the thing I'm probably most proud of with it is it was like an 80-channel animation at Times Square. And I was really playing around with this idea of being a marketer, because that's not who I am at all. And this game is certainly not a marketable game. The goal of the game is you're finding a Sasquatch sex amulet, which what even is that? So it's funny. Let's see if I can play this. It always messes up the... Yeah, here's what it looks like. So this happened every night for 1 minute in October of 2021. It was just really surreal to see. A lot of this stuff is it's stuff I work on my couch at night while I'm watching Sopranos or something. And then to see it on all these screens was really, really funny. And of course, this didn't lead to any sales or any gaming success or anything like that. It was just something that I wanted to do to play around with this idea of being a fake marketer. Let's see, I don't know. Any really good shots? Yeah, I didn't get a lot of sleep that month because I just went to go look at it so much. Let's see, okay. Cool, just a few more slides. How do you start this again? Okay, anyway. So I guess when you're making these more critical projects and you're putting them on these spaces like Steam, you're just like how John Waters was subverting expectations we have around what is normalized in movies. When you make these critical games, you're doing the same thing with video games. And gamers, a lot of times, have expectations as to what video games are, right? And when you're messing with those expectations, a lot of times they get very upset, or they think that you're crazy. They're always calling me a communist and a drug addict, which I totally am, but why can't communist drug addicts make video games? Why can't we be in the same space as these other ones, right? And I think like it's a really important time to be more critical with video games, right? There's so much technology coming at us right now, and I think a lot of it is stuff people don't actually want, right? Like I don't think any of us asked for the metaverse. I don't think most of us asked for like cryptocurrency, but they're really like shoving that down our throats. And I think we have to be critical of it, right? And especially like as people that consume and use technology, which I think most of us are, it's important, I think, to provide some alternatives, right? Because I think in a lot of like larger games and a lot of these newer technologies, like the suburbs that I mentioned earlier, are like very unsustainable things, right? And they're like very fucked up things. So it's good to be a little critical of them, question them, but also it's important to remember that like these are games. We don't have to take them super seriously, and we can have fun and play around with them. And I think just the last thing I want to show is something that I've been kind of obsessed with, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen this clip. But it's Jonathan Blow from Indie Game, the movie, taking his game Braid like way too seriously while Soulja Boy is playing it and giving comments on it. And I think it's just like, I would rather be like Soulja Boy and just like having fun doing what I'm doing, not thinking about it too much, right? Versus Jonathan Blow that's having a very bad time with his game. But let's watch this, and then that's it, right? But let's see if I can play it. Error, damn. Should I refresh it? Then I'm playing around with a tab. Let me see. I don't know. Maybe it won't play. Play. Technology. Ugh. But most of you have seen it, right? Yeah, I guess I can just put it on YouTube, maybe. Now I'm doing the tabs, so I'm doing what I said. This one's longer, though. I had like a 15-second edit.
Hey, it's your boy Soulja Boy too.
I don't know.
They got this game, right?
I don't know.
It look like Mario in the future. He just walk around jumping shit. What's the funny part about it? You do like this. You. What do you do? How you do that? How you catch that?
On release day, you start seeing the reactions of people on
Say it
there.
right.
For
I wanna
me,
get
it was
to the
a very
part.
addictive thing, because here,
This is the part.
it's like, oh, I visualized that I was gonna have some kind of connection with people
Yeah, this
through
is
this
right.
game, and they think it's great, but the connection isn't there because they're kind of living in a different world still. So they think it's great for some of the reasons that I do, but not for other.
And they got no point to the game. You just walk around jumping on shit.
They're not seeing the most important thing.
They did him so dirty with that edit. But seriously, like, yeah, like it's their video games. Be critical, but take it easy. Okay, thanks so much. That's my talk.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was actually really, really funny. We're going to open up the Q&A now real quick for anybody who has questions. So just raise your hand, and then we'll, right there in the blue. Don't look back, you.
Thanks so much. That was really great.
Thank you.
How did you get the Times Square people to play your
Yeah,
your
good
stuff?
question. Well, my background is in visual arts, so I guess I've just been in that world for like, I finished school in 2012. I know a lot of people in that world. That's an organization called Times Square Art Alliance, and they know someone that I did animation commissions with, and I worked really well with them, and they just commissioned me to do that. Every month they have a new artist at midnight, so if you're ever in New York at midnight, you'll see some cool art pop up on everything at midnight for 1 minute. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Which drugs help with the creations of your games?
No, caffeine is it. That's it, right? Drugs are great, but I don't think they have much to do with my games.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are always commenting on drugs while I watch YouTubers play my games and stuff. I wish drugs were like video games. That'd be amazing. I'd do drugs way more. Drugs are a lot of fun, but I don't think they help much with coding and 3D design, except caffeine. Caffeine helps a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask about like doing stuff in the gallery art world as a game designer. What is like that experience been like for you? I know you came from like an arts background, so that maybe made it easier, but like do you have any advice for games people that are interested in showing their work in like more traditional art spaces?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I do get asked that sometimes. I just don't know. It's tricky. I think to be in traditional art spaces, it helps to just have an art degree, I guess, and start from that point. I guess that's why I started there and then moved to games. And then I think both those worlds really need each other. I think the games world could benefit from having more artists in it, and the art world could definitely benefit from more people that make games, right? It's a huge cultural thing. I could do a whole other talk on this, but I guess if you're really interested in doing that, the best thing to do would be find artists you like who are already doing it and hit them up. And if you have a good, presence online of some games that you've made, we're all nerds and we like talking about what we're doing. So doing a studio visit or maybe a Zoom call with someone who's in that world is a totally feasible thing. So I would just say or the best thing would be like what Fantasia Malware is doing and just do your own thing, right? Don't wait for galleries to like pay attention to you. Just start doing some stuff and then chances are some people will hear about it. Yeah, and you'll have other opportunities that way. But I'm old, I'm like 43, so I've been doing this for so long and just you have to stay in a city for a long time. It takes, decades of perseverance to get anybody to listen to anything you have to say. So, but yeah, I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Cool.
If we have no more questions, please give a round of applause again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.